give you a quick walk around of the wood-fired hot tub and my palm tree, my stainless steel palm tree. I think you'll like it. First thing we got is we got a hot tub that we made out of southern yellow pine. We didn't make it out of cedar. We made it out of southern yellow pine. Steps. It's got 4 2x6s underneath the bottom of it that it all sits on top of a plastic pallet, and then the whole tub itself sits on top of that. We got the bottom insulated 4 inches thick. We use a barrel stove kit, and on our barrel stove kit what we did was we ran 6 runs of iron pipe on one side and 6 runs of iron pipe on the other side, starting at the bottom and going to the top. So what we have here is we have an intake on the bottom that's teed together and a discharge on the top that's teed together. Goes back, goes through a filter, goes back into our hot tub. A standard barrel stove kit, you can buy that door and that. I like the barrels that have the band around them. They seem like they're a lot heavier of a barrel, but put a little chimney pipe on it there. It usually takes about 5 degrees per hour for the water temperature to come up in the tub. The tub holds about 560 gallons the way I figured it. But I'm going to show you this palm tree here real quick. It's 12 foot 6 inches tall. The leaves are 40 inches long, 14 inches wide. They're all plasma cut out of a sheet of hardened stainless. So the other day we had 75-mile-an-hour winds up here and it never flinched. It stayed right there. I started out with a piece of 6-inch pipe, 1/4-inch wall, and you can see where I attached it to my 1-inch plate on the bottom. I started out with it being on an angle, put multiple passes and put a brace on there. Got 1-inch J bolts, 24 inches long, that anchor it into about 1.5 yards of concrete. And then I came up to about someplace right about in here, and I notched that pipe on one side, and I took 1/4 inch out and I welded it back together. So I've got 3 of those as the palm tree goes up, that gives it that nice little bend and makes it look more real than you know. Up at the top, on top of that, I have a piece of 1/4-inch plate steel that's 360 degrees welded all the way around. I got 2-inch channel iron up there that bolts onto that plate and bolts onto my leaves, that holds my leaves up. The leaves overlap in the center a little bit, but that's not going to hurt a thing. I got a hole drilled up at the top. I run electric wire all the way down the pole so I could plug in lights at night. I got 2 little LED lights up there at the top. And it's really pretty because when the sun shines on it, that stainless steel reflects that sun all over the place. It really looks cool, especially coming through the windows. Once I got that done, I started at the top and I took aluminum flashing, 6-inch aluminum flashing, and I cut it into pieces, and I wrapped one piece around the pole and I put a pop rivet in it. I take that back, I'm sorry. I started at the bottom. I put one piece around it, I put a pop rivet in it. Then the next one overlaps that, and I put a pop rivet in it, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until it came up that this one gets a rivet and it laps, and then this one comes in and gets a rivet and it laps, and this one comes in and gets a rivet and it laps, and so on as it wraps around the tree, so that it goes all the way up to the top up there. So there you can see where my leaves are bolted on to my channel iron, and that big plate that the channel iron bolts to, all self-locking nuts, grade 8 hardware with self-locking nuts, so I don't have to worry about it. we plasma cut all those leaves out of a piece of stainless, and if you lay your stainless out right and you stagger them backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, you should be able to get all of them out of a sheet. Make sure you lay it out right. Build you a cardboard pattern. That's what I did. I built me a cardboard pattern. I laid the first one out and then tried the second one. Make sure they're all going to fit so you're not wasting material. But people come up here and they all comment about it. They say, boy, I sure do like that palm tree. Where did that come from? Well, it was made right here like everything else. But it is pretty nice. And 75-mile-an-hour wind the other day and it didn't take it down. Now the first one I made out of 1/2-inch rebar, and I had 6 pieces of rebar, and I bent them all the same, and I put a strut between each of the 6 rebars all the way up the tree, a foot apart. And I got it all done. I had the leaves on it and everything, and I had the wrap on the side of it, and I thought, you know what, I better shake test this thing and make sure a big strong wind gets a hold of it and don't take it down. So I reached up and I grabbed a hold of that tree and I started shaking that tree back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I did that for about 5 minutes, and the next thing you know, that tree come crashing down. It snapped it right out of the concrete down at the bottom, and that tree come crashing down over here on my picnic table. So sometimes you got to learn the lesson the hard way. So this one's a solid piece of 6-inch pipe, 1/4-inch wall, and you can see the wind's blowing pretty good up here now. You can watch the leaves turning on the thing, and it really is pretty to watch, especially at night if you got the lights on and you're sitting in the hot tub, and it's pretty nice. It's pretty. So anyhow, a little bit more back to my hot tub. It wasn't a difficult project to make, but it took a lot of time. I had my son help me with it. We tongue and grooved the floor, and these are leftovers from the floor. This little bar here is a leftover, and you can see right here where it's tongue and grooved, and the whole floor was tongue and grooved. So once you lay it out and you cut the circle, I cut the circle with a router. Once you cut the circle out, the leftover piece was this back bar, and then these 3 steps. So all 3 of these steps were left over on one end of the tub, and that back bar was left over on the other end of the tub. Everything on this whole tub is 2-inch southern yellow pine, 8 inches wide and 8 feet long, every piece of it. If you do it all right, you'll get 4 spindles out of each board. But you really do need to have a planer and a joiner. I take the lumber and I hand pick it so I don't have any big knots in it. Make sure if you do have a knot, it doesn't go all the way through. So there's some knots, but you know what, they don't go all the way through, and it done a fine job. So my cover is all made out of some real heavy plastic and 2x4s, and it's made in 2 pieces. It's got a back piece and a front piece, and right down through here you'll see where I've screwed, this is screwed into one piece, this is screwed into the other piece, so it's using the plastic for a hinge. And I've opened and closed this thing 1,000 times, and you would think that plastic would break, but it has not broke yet. So it really works well to lift it up. You just take half of it and you raise it up and you lay it down, and then you take the other half, you raise it up, and it stows just like that. So there's your bar back. And I got an extra little clamp over there that you can take if the wind was real strong. That lid's pretty heavy, but if it was real strong outside, there's a place you can put a little screw in there to keep it from ever trying to wind to try to blow it down or mess with it. I built homemade yellow pine seats that go inside of it. I got it leaning an inch that away because down there on the bottom you'll see my drain plug. So when you want to drain it, it'll drain it completely. You don't have to worry about draining it. I got 3 hinges on that top, just regular stainless steel door hinges. These joints are 3 degrees between joints. A few of them, as I went through there, I'd get like 4 of them that were 3 degrees on each side, and then I'd get one that was 2.5 degrees, and then 3 degrees on each side, and then 2.5 degrees, until I had them all fitted to where everything fitted perfect. There's no canoe joint, it's just a straight cut joint. Every joint has sealer in it before it was assembled, and we assembled it by putting the pieces in, putting sealer between the pieces, and then there's a big dado cut at the bottom. I'll show you that in a minute and how that worked. We cut our stainless steel bands out of a 4x8 sheet of stainless with a plasma cutter, and then you can see here where we seamed them together. So we just cut them out with a plasma cutter, grind them and polish them, and then bend a little lap in them, TIG welded them together, and then we staggered the 3 clamps. So here's one of the clamps where they go together. It's got a sliding tab that slides way around here so it doesn't kink it. And then there's another one on the other side, and then there's another one over here. There's one down there, see? We got a circulating pump with a filter inside this housing. Shows you what the temperature is when the heater would come on, which I don't have it on, I'm running on wood heat, but it shows you it's 87.9 degrees Fahrenheit right now inside that tub. I keep a timer on it here, so if I'm not heating it, I can have it turn off and turn on every 4 hours to keep the water circulating. If you're running a heater, you got to leave it on continuously. Otherwise, you'll have a problem. You don't want to have a problem. All of these braces I put in here, these are all made out of 2x8s, and they're tongue and grooved together. These are scraps left over from the floor. So there really wasn't a lot of wasted material. I didn't have a handful of material that was wasted. When I got all done with it, I used them coated screws that won't never rust. They're those real nice deck screws is what they are. That screws this top onto this bar, and also what's screwing together the handrail on the other side. Also what's screwing the seats down. When I got all done with it, I epoxy coated 3 coats on this tub, top, bottom, everywhere. That's what makes it, you know, a good tub. If there was all these little screw holes, I filled them in with a clear sealer, run that epoxy right over the top of them. This tub doesn't leak a drop, and right now it's going on, this will be, I guess this will be 2 years right now. It's 2 years old right now. But it is pretty nice to have, and you come up here and you work all day, and pretty nice to late at night to come out here when the moon's out and jump in the tub. Pretty nice. You can see I kind of keep a little insulation on my hot water pipes going back to the pool, and there you can see a better shot of the T at the bottom where the water's coming into the heater. But there's 2 rows, 2 crisscross rows that come in low, and they go all the way to the top. In the same way over here, you start at the bottom, they crisscross back and forth till they go all the way to the top, and by the time they go out, that water's pretty warm. To the palm tree leaf. It got a little too windy outside. So this is a pattern of my palm tree leaves. Cut it out of cardboard. I tape it onto the stainless steel. I mark it with a black magic marker. I cut it out with a plasma cutter. I slick that off with a flap wheel. 15 inches wide, 46 inches long. There's 6 of them. My channel iron comes out here 6 inches, and there's about 3 inches on the round plate up at the top. 2 3/8 inch bolts on the plate, 2 3/8 inch bolts through the leaf. Self-locking nuts, washers, tighten it up. Not too much to it. So if you're going to build your palm tree, I mean, you can build it any way you want to build it. Make your leaves any way you want to make them, but it was a fun project. The hot tub, we started out and we bought 32 boards, 2 inches by 8 inches by 8 feet long. Southern yellow pine. Well, when you go to the Home Depot or wherever you go to get your lumber, I went to 3 different places to get mine. I pick it up, I make sure it's pretty straight. You really want to pick out some good stuff. If it's got a great big knot in it, go, keep sorting until you find what you want. You might have to make 3 or 4 trips to different places to find the lumber that you want. But make sure it's not warped, it doesn't have a lot of bad spots in it, because that's just not going to be any good for what you want to do with it. As soon as we get the boards home, what I did was I run them through a thickness planer, and I just took enough off to clean them up so that they were nice and flat on the top and the bottom. Then I run them through the joiner to make sure that that edge was square, and to clean that edge up also. Then I set up my table saw, and I set my table saw up to cut the boards long ways right down the middle. You want to cut them right down the middle. I put them in the chop saw, and I cut them at 43 inches. I like to trim up each end, so I cut a little off one end, and then I go to my 43 inches. So all of my spindles in my tub are 43 inches tall. I started out on the floor. I took 10 boards and I put a dado blade in the table saw. I run them through the table saw, and I dado cut a male and a female. I took and I put sealer. This is what I used right here. This is pretty good stuff. I put sealer in every tongue and groove. I took my clamps and I clamped it all up. I think I had 5 clamps on. I clamped it all up. I let it dry. Then I came back and I took my floor and I made me a pivoting router cutter. I planed a board down real thin. I put a pivot point in here, which is a screw that you find the very dead center of your board laying out there. You run this screw down into it, and then set your router at 1/4 of an inch and go all the way around. Drop it to 1/2 inch, go all the way around. Drop it to 3/4, and so on until you get all the way through that board. Have it sitting up on something so your bit don't hit your floor. But when it gets done with this, and you got that nice round disc, and you look at it, you'll think somebody sanded it. It cuts it that nice. It does a real nice job of cutting that. So then, once you get your bottom done, what I like to do is I took and I put 6x6 runners, 2 on the outside edges and 2 in the middle, to help support that weight, because what I did was I mounted that whole thing onto one of these great big plastic pallets so I could move it around with a forklift. Not that I ever will, but if you wanted to, you could move it around with a forklift. But I screwed them 2x6s to that floor, and I screwed the pallet to the 2x6s, so it's all, it's all contained. The spindles, when you go to put the spindles, make the spindles, my spindles are 3 1/4 inches wide. They're 1 3/8 inches thick, and I cut a dado cut down here that's 5/8 of an inch deep, 1 3/8 inches tall, and it's 4 inches off of the bottom. All of these spindles are 43 inches tall. I cut them all at 43 inches tall. It took 61 spindles to go all the way around that tub. The very last one was 1 3/4 inch wide little filler strip to make it work perfect. These angles here on each side are 3 degrees. So I'd have probably 5 of them that were 3 degrees, and then I would put one in that was 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 degrees. And once it went onto the board, I measured all the way around, and I made a 5/8 of an inch mark, which is how deep my dado cut is, I made a mark so when my spindle fits on there, you can look at the floor and make sure that you're sitting on that mark. That way you know you're all the way on far enough. So once you get that all accomplished, you get your spindles all cut, you want to turn your floor upside down, and you're going to take all these and you're going to put them on there, and you're going to hand fit them all the way around, and put your ratchet strap. Go all the way around there and put your ratchet strap on there and tighten it up, and see that they all fit. When they all fit a good joint, and a good joint, you don't see any air anywhere. You can take a flashlight, and walk around the inside of your tub and make sure you don't see any light anywhere. Make sure they all fit good with your strap on there tight. You put a strap on the top, a strap on the bottom, tighten them all up. Look at your marks to make sure that your spindles are almost all the way on or all the way on. And if everything fits, now you're ready to seal them and put them on for keeps. It always helps if you got a couple of people, because when you go to do this, you are a busy person. You're trying to put the sealer on. Every joint gets sealer. That gets 2 beads of sealer in here. You put a bead of sealer on each edge. You're putting it on there, you go get the next one, the same thing. You put it on there, you go get the next one, the same thing. Tapping it on there with a hammer, make sure it fits good. Once you get them all on there, you take your straps, run your straps, 3 straps, one down here at the joint, one in the middle, and one at the top. Tighten them all up, and just keep tightening them up, tightening them up, tightening them up. You're going to see that sealer starting to ooze out of these cracks on each side. It's not a problem. Just wipe it off, little as you go. Sometimes you might just want to let it dry for a couple of days and then come back and you can roll it off with your finger if you keep rolling on it. It's not too difficult to get it off of there. But once you get them all on there and you got the bands on there and you got it tight, the next thing you're going to want to do is either you're going to have to make you some stainless steel bands like what we did, or you can buy 1¼ inch stainless steel banding in a roll. I think a roll of it was about, I looked at it, I think it was $200 or $300 for a roll. But nevertheless, you're going to have to make your bands, and I showed you a picture of how mine looks, so make them accordingly. But you're going to make 3 bands and stagger your joints, and you're going to take these bands off one at a time. So if you take the one off the bottom first, then put your stainless steel band on there and snug it up. Take the middle one off, put your band on there and snug it up. Take your top one off, put your band on there and snug it up. Once you get them all tight, you should be good to go. One thing I did on mine was I took and I epoxied the top and the floor, and all the inside of the tub has got 3 coats of clear epoxy on it. I wished I would have taken and epoxied the entire tub, inside, outside, top, bottom, everywhere, because what's happening now is it's starting to get a little bit of discoloration in some of the outside wood, whereas if it would have epoxy all the way around, I don't think you'd have any discoloration anywhere. But it does make for a really pretty and smooth to touch. When you walk up to it and you touch it, it's so nice and smooth. But that epoxy, it's a little pricey, but it does a wonderful, wonderful job. You get you a circulating pool pump of any kind and mount on the back like I did. You get you a filter in there. Your plumbing is whatever you prefer. If you want to just have an in and an out into the heater, if you want to run an electric heater, I mean, I got a standby electric heater on mine, but you don't have to have that. I'd just as soon go out there and smell a wood fire, you know. I kind of like the smell of that. But once you get the plumbing all put in it, you can buy what they call a bulkhead fitting, which goes, you bore a hole with a hole saw, you put your bulkhead fitting in there, there's a nut on the back side, it tightens it down, and it goes right into a PVC pipe. Everybody sells them. There's nothing complicated about them. It's not a problem. Get whatever you want to get, you know. So good sealer, patience. Your spindles with your dado cut, you want to make sure when you cut that dado cut that you want to try every piece and make sure that it fits as it goes around that tub. 3 degrees on both sides, 2.5 degrees about every 5th one. You make them 2.5 degrees. And the last little piece on mine ended up being 1 3/4 inches. But you just got to make sure that when you put them all on there and you tighten it all up before you put sealer on, that they all fit and they fit perfect. After that, I don't think you'll have too much trouble. The 2 off falls, when you cut the circle in the floor, you're going to have an off fall on the top and an off fall on the bottom. So what I did was I took that off fall and I made my back bar top, and the other off fall I made my three treads going up my steps to get you up into the tub. I also had a couple of spindles that weren't used because they had a knot in them or something like that, so that's actually the same way I made my staircase. My tread comes right into here, sits right into the same notch. This goes up, I put a handrail on top of it. It's pretty simple joint and it really works good. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you can make yourself one. I think you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of it. Give me that thumbs up and thanks for watching.